Hi, so today I'm going to be reviewing a watch from Nostal Watches, which is an Indonesian microbrand. And I was kind of intrigued when they asked if I wanted to review it because I've just never seen a microbrand from Indonesia before. And I guess to me it was doubly interesting because not so far away is the city-state of Singapore, a neighboring country. And Singapore is pretty much, in my opinion, the world capital for watch microbrands. I read an article yesterday that mentioned there were like 60 microbrands or so, registered microbrands, and I know of about 25, and I've met probably almost 15. I'll have to go add up the numbers, but certainly more than 10. So there's definitely a lot of activity in Singapore, but when you look at nearby countries like Malaysia or Indonesia, not really much going on there. And I'm kind of keen to see what I'm going to get. Is this going to be a little different as a result, or it's a new microbrand, Nostal Watches. This is their first outing with a model called the Saxodate, Saxodate. And this is the Midnight Blue limited edition. They have 3 colors, and I'll show you what the other ones look like in a minute. So this is not a prototype, it's actually a production watch that they sent me. I know that because you could pick which serial number on the back on the limited edition. The total edition size is 150. So they were kind enough to let me pick a serial number, and for some reason, nobody else has picked serial number 1. So I was thinking, wow, I have managed to get a 001 here, so that made me particularly happy. So nice to get one of those to review. Also makes it a little awkward. My full disclosure, I don't get paid for doing any of these reviews, and I always say what I like and I don't like. And if I have, maybe about 80% of the time I have to return the watch. Which is fine. I have no expectation of keeping it, but the remainder of the time I'm sometimes allowed to keep the watch, and it's kind of a nice thing obviously to do, so I won't say no, but I never let that influence the review. So this one's a little awkward for me because I did have a few gotchas that I found with this watch. They might not be showstoppers for you. I will go through them. 1 or 2 of them were minor, and 1 or 2 of them were less minor. But at the same time, there were some nice things that I really liked about this watch too. So it's always awkward when you're given a watch and and people wanted to keep it. But I'm not going to let that influence the review in any way. So this is pretty much a mixed bag. So I'll say that up front. They're really nice guys too. So I think a lot of people are going to like this watch. But definitely, I want to point out 1 or 2 things that I found with it as well. So let's get started. This is the production box that it comes in, production packaging. There was an outer external cardboard box, and then even beyond that was about 1/2 inch thick kind of bubble wrap, incredibly well taped down. It took me like 20 minutes to get that off. So extremely good external packaging, not an issue for any damage to the external part of the box. And this is a very sturdy box, and the reason you have this cardboard box like this is there's a wooden box on the inside. So let's get the lid off here and get into this. The wooden box does have a nice felt covering. It's not paper. You sometimes get kind of a plasticky, papery material. That's quite common. And it is a real wood box. It's not like a veneer. It's solid the whole way through. I've taken a good look at it. So obviously you've got the Nostal name on the front. Pros and cons with the box. It's nice to get a genuine wood one. I kind of was surprised a little bit. Quality on the inside is a bit lacking. If I go look at the top of just move the camera up a bit. So if you look here, you see the wood's kind of banged around a little bit. Just naturally, maybe it's in the grain. So you're getting a genuine product, and the joints are not exactly high quality. But at the same time, I feel this is, strangely enough, a good thing, because when you get those piano lacquer finished boxes, I'm kind of getting used to that, and this kind of feels Indonesian, like an Indonesian piece of furniture. They've taken some local wood with its imperfections, so it's not one of these polished pieces. In fact, those kind of piano lacquer boxes that you get, I often wonder if they're particle board or some cheap wood underneath that has had the lacquer applied to it. But this is a genuine piece of wood, a nice deep brown color. I actually think people like that for the flavor from Indonesia. I think that's actually a plus. but I'm trying to point out everything that I can just to give you a full review of the packaging. The first negative I have, and this is minor because if they watch the review they can fix this, and I'm going to point this out to them. External packaging was fantastic, no damage at all, no chance of any damage. It's just like really well wrapped. Internally we have a very loose watch here. It just wiggles around, see, in this box that also moves around somewhat on the inside. So this box could have been bumping up and down, coming out, banging the wood here, and there was no bubble wrap or anything there to protect that. So that did worry me a little bit, but I had no damage on this watch when I received it, which is nice. But I will be mentioning that to them, so I suspect that they'll just take care in the future to put some bubble wrap on the inside. Obviously the watch was a little bit better protected than you see it now. I've taken out the watch, I've tested it, so it had a little plastic film over here. I had a blue cap on the end of the crown, and the strap that comes with the watch, the bracelet, had a like a sellotape style film over it to protect the links, make sure they're not scratched or anything. So they did a good job there. It's just this could pretty much bang around in a wooden box. Hopefully, maybe it wouldn't get too much damage, but it just depends on the delivery company. It's chance of the draw, and when they made such a big effort on the outside, I'd like to have seen that on the inside too. So I know we want to look at the watch and look at its details, but let's talk about what else you get in the box too. You get a booklet with some pictures of the watch and so on. It also has pictures of all three watches in the series and the instructions on how to operate it. So you can see some wrist shots here for other watches, care instructions, how to wind it, the usual kinds of things that you'll get. So this is the white version. I'm looking at the blue limited edition here. So here are the three models that they have. So the one we're looking at is this blue one, which is a limited edition of 150 watches. It's about $40 more expensive than the other two versions. And they have a white version, a white-faced version, and a black dialed version as well. So you do have a bit of a choice there. So that's good to know. So I'll just put that to one side. You also get a warranty card, which has obviously your name, the date you purchased the watch, the watch number if it's a limited edition, and the model and the color. So that's good to know, and I notice it says international warranty on it. I did note, however, that in the paperwork that I received there was no information on that warranty. I don't know how long that is, whether it's a few months, a few years, and I don't know what it covers, whether it's just manufacturing defects or something more. So if you are looking at purchasing this watch, check out the website, see what it says there, make sure you print that out and keep a copy when you place your order, because it looks like that information doesn't come in the paperwork that comes with the watch. So I don't think that's particularly an issue. Maybe it's just an oversight, but the fact that they've given you an international warranty card, obviously they do have a warranty, so I'm not expecting that they don't. It's just they haven't provided details here. But there again, I didn't purchase this watch, so perhaps this may be the exception. So we'll get into the watch now. Enough of the packaging, just put this to one side, and we'll talk about the features, pros and cons, what my thoughts were on it, and then you can draw your own conclusions. So first things first is this dial, the blue. So I mean, actually something else struck me even before the dial, but just talking about the dial, because people tend to get drawn to dials first. It definitely draws you in. It's a fumé dial, so it means that it's a different color or a darker color on the outside. It's either an extremely dark blue or a black color, and then it kind of lightens up and it gradually gradiates towards a lighter color on the inside. So it has a very nice effect, and that kind of make it looks a little bit deeper. And the dial is actually slightly disc-shaped. I believe it curves down just by looking at the dial. That could also be basically the result of looking it through a slightly domed sapphire crystal lens. But nevertheless, I do get the feeling that the dial is very slightly sloped where the outer track is, and then kind of settles on down. So having a bit of a slope to it with a fumé effect probably deepens that a little bit. So that was a nice feature, but the feature that really struck me most of all about this watch, it's not a cookie cutter watch, is the case. So the case here, it's not a cushion case. It kind of has elements of a cushion case, but it's got an ellipse here, and it's not a fully round ellipse, but it's nevertheless an ellipse, rather, you know, kind of a rounded off cushion case, I suppose. So you have this kind of a nice ellipse shape. It's not round. You've got these four ends here, and even the lugs, it goes down to not straight lug pins. It's just got this nice curve that continues through, and obviously, as you can see here, we have a custom bracelet to go with a custom case. So let's get this off the cushion and start taking a look at some of the features on this watch. So talking about the case a little bit more, I did like, you've got a mix of brushed, polished, brushed, and then polished. It says actually polished underneath. It's not just the case back screwed in. So the combination of those really accents the curve. It's nice to actually see that. You can also pick this up on the front here. So it's just that little bit extra that makes this a nicer case than you'd normally see on a number of watches, to have that mix of polished and brushed. And obviously, I mean, this style of bracelets probably most people is familiar with, but you're going to have center links are polished and then the outer ones are brushed. So that kind of goes a little bit with this alternating theme that we have going here. The crown signed. I actually found it to be a very easy to grip crown. No trouble unscrewing it, screwing it in. It didn't feel bitty or anything. I could easily pull it out, wind it, pull it out to the first stop position for the date. See the date changing here, and then pull it out to the second stop position for the time. So it really was not an issue to use this, and sometimes on a number of watches it has been an issue. It was easy to screw down, 2 or 3 turns and I'm done. So I kind of like that, and it's a minor thing to some people, but I've been annoyed by a few watches that are otherwise really quite gorgeous, but something's not quite right with the crown. It feels kind of a bit bitty when you wind it, if you're going to hand wind the watch, or the crown's really just a little bit too small to grip nicely. I think I had that issue with version 1 of the Zelos Mako, though I understand that's fixed in with the crown on version 2 now. So definitely, you know, that's a nice feature as well. The links on this are solid links. It is actually, probably got this upside down here looking through the camera lens. Let's take a look. Yeah, so it is actually screwed pins. I do note these are very small screwed pins, however, so you're going to need a pretty small screwdriver. Not sure what the size is. It could be 0.8 millimeters or certainly no more than 1 millimeter. So you will need a small screwdriver if you want to adjust this yourself. Certainly recommend getting one if you are into watches, if you don't have one already, because a number of these watches are coming with small screwed links, which is actually nicer than push pins in my opinion. It's a better quality bracelet. Obviously it's not a diver's clasp, it's a butterfly buckle here, which hides, you can see with the signatures, it hides the joint quite nicely, and that makes sense to me because you've actually got, you don't have a dive watch here, you have a not quite a formal dress watch. It's a little bit, maybe it's not quite that level of elegance, but it's I guess it's a casual dress watch, for want of a better phrase. Is probably a better term that somebody could let me know here, but I'm going to just call this a casual dress watch. So in terms of features and dimensions, that kind of thing, specifications, I did measure it, I did test it. I'll do this again for everyone's benefit. It is sapphire glass, it's single domed anti-reflective coating. I haven't seen the coating, but then it's hard to really see that because it's probably a blue coating and this is a blue fumé dial. But I'm guessing it's probably there because I'm not having too many issues with reflection right now, and I've got a light overhead that I can get to reflect. But this is an indoor office and I tend to pick up a lot of reflections here, and it's not doing too badly. The dial's pretty clear. So in terms of specifications, measuring from the base of the screw down crown to the top of the very slight dome that we have here, this is also a boxed sapphire crystal. In fact, that box shape is actually in lieu of a bezel, I guess, which is interesting. But measuring from the top to the bottom is 14 millimeters, just under 14 actually. So that's really nice for an automatic, pretty decent. before we go into the other dimensions, this is ready. So if this lights up a few bars green, then we know we have sapphire crystal. So let's go test that out and see what we get. Of course, it lights up a few bars, so we know it's sapphire crystal. In terms of specifications, again, sorry, jumping around a little bit here, I apologize. Let's just get that out of the way. So it is actually something that could be kind of a field watch if you wanted it to be. 100 meter water resistance, Seiko NH35A, which is a very robust movement. It hacks, it hand winds, it's low beat movement, but it lasts for years. It's in a ton of divers. So you've got a sapphire glass, nice water rating, very reliable movement. So it's certainly something, this could actually probably make a pretty decent everyday wear watch, you know, wear it to work, that kind of a thing. You can bang around in it too if you need to, and obviously a bracelet like this, you can pretty much do anything you want to, whether you could go swimming with it or whatever you'd like to do. It's of course 316L stainless steel, but probably that goes without saying. So specs are pretty decent. Height-wise was pretty nice as well. I didn't expect it to be under 14 millimeters because this is a 42 millimeter diameter here. The lug to lug I've measured at 50, and I haven't taken this off to confirm this. I haven't taken this bracelet off of the case, but just measuring it, it looks to be 20 millimeters. So kind of a little bit surprised, because normally on a 42 you'd get a 22 millimeter. But there are reasons for that. They wanted to carry this really nice curve on down here. So I can see why they've done that, and it works well with the bracelet. Not 100% sure how it would look on a NATO strap. That might make, but maybe it accents these corners quite nicely. I'll have to see to find out. But nevertheless, it doesn't look bad on the bracelet at all. So I don't have an issue at 20 millimeters on a bracelet. I'm wondering about a leather strap, and we'll have to maybe just grab something from the watch box here. Totally the wrong colors, but let's, I've even got a blue one, let's grab one of those too. So just randomly grabbing some straps here, not the right strap, might not work too well, wrong blue, but you know, you can get an idea that maybe it might work with a 20 millimeter leather strap as well, or a 20 millimeter NATO, but would have been nice to have seen 22 if that was possible, but I do get that this is probably, that would have interfered slightly with this. I think there would have been room, but you know, it's not the end of the world. It's just a minor oversight, or not even an oversight. Maybe this is just a taste thing when I think about it. You know, 42 is kind of, if you go 40 millimeters, I would expect 20 millimeter lug width. So 42 tends to move to 22, but you know, it's kind of that breaking point anyway. Regarding the back of the case, we have, it's an exhibition case back. I haven't peeled off the little plastic there, so my apologies for that. And it's got some interesting writing on it, as well as some specification information. It actually says Founders Edition, in this case 001/150. So it's basically, you have the serial number on the back of the case, which is nice in a limited edition, of course. But the fact that it says Founders Edition is a +2, and the limited edition size isn't that huge. Sometimes I see a limited edition and they're doing 2,000 watches. And you know, if it's maybe, you know, Seiko with one of their pressages, fair enough. But if it's a Microbrand, I often, you know, it doesn't really feel like a limited edition. It's just like a label they're selling it under. But this really is a limited edition if they're only doing 150 of these. So that's nice to see. So let's talk about what I don't like. Those were the things that I do like, especially the case. I'm really digging the polished and brushed alternate finishes there. So things that I don't particularly like about this. First one is extremely minor. But, you know, and this is not, again, the fault of the watch or the designer. With a Seiko NH35, it's not exactly the sexiest movement. So, and it's pretty plain. They haven't bothered doing any special finishing or changing out the rotor or anything. So it's really, you know, I guess it's somewhat equivalent to seeing the back of a bottom-end Seiko, like a Seiko 5 or something. Nothing really decorated there or exciting, but, you know, some people are going to love this exhibition case back. Probably for me, I would have liked to see something like a closed case with some kind of engraving or relief or something like that to add a little bit more interest. So that's just me, and that's only because it's an NH35, not the sexiest of movements. But somebody else is going to want to see that movement, heartbeat ticking away, and going to enjoy that. So what I'm saying here is pretty minor. Maybe that's more to do with my taste than someone else's. So those are the minor issues, I guess. But there were two that I found, I won't say major, but they're nevertheless issues that did concern me. So the first one I'll talk about is the lume. So this is supposedly Swiss Superluminova, the C3 color, and I've done about a dozen loom tests now, and I'm getting pretty consistent results. I'm finding the lume on the hands is great, no problem, and obviously you can always tell the time with the lume on the hands. You can see these kind of boat-shaped indices, which are actually kind of interesting shape, but they look like they've got a lot of lume, a lot of surface areas covered with the lume. I was actually pretty shocked. This is actually, in terms of any watch that I've owned or I've reviewed that does have lume on the indices, even if it's just a little dot like a Seiko Alpinist or something. You know, out of all the watches that I've had, this is the worst lume on the indices. Absolutely the worst. It fades within a second to nothing. Literally, you can barely make it out to start with. So that's not necessarily a showstopper, though. For keep in mind, this is not a dive watch. You're not going to be swimming in the water with it. It's more of a semi-formal everyday dress watch. You can probably still tell the time from the position of the main hands anyway, and you can clearly differentiate between minutes and hours here. There's obviously no lume on the second hand. So again, it's not a showstopper, but given the fact that it's supposed to be Swiss Superluminova, something is a little off here. So it might well be Swiss Superluminova, but an incredibly thin covering. But given the area on each of these indices that is covered, I don't understand why it's fading so fast. Even if it's a thin covering, it should maintain its charge for some considerable time. So let me show you this, and then you can see for yourself and make your own mind up. I guess it's possible when they claim Swiss Superluminova that they might just mean the hands and it's a different lume on the indices, and that's a shame, because we'll get into the second item that I wanted to bring up, which will be the price. For this particular price point, I would have expected everything to be Swiss Superluminova. So I'll be right back. Okay, so the main light's off, and we're just going to lume this up with UV light here just for a few seconds. You can see actually already that the minute now hands are glowing away quite nicely, picking up. So if I just turn this off, give this about 5 or 6 more seconds, give it a fair shot, looming this up with a UV light should really make it go. Obviously it's going to fade because I'm not charging it up for like 10 minutes or half an hour, but you see how quickly these the indices fade compared to everything else. So they begin to fade immediately, they're barely noticeable now, and they're gone. That's it, no indices. And then you can see that hour-minute hand is quite happily, it keeps going pretty much as long as you like. If I just charge this up briefly, take it away, you can see the effect there. So something is definitely off with the indices, and the lume is pretty much, I would say, non-usable, almost non-existent on that. There's certainly some lume there because it does pick up on something, but if it was Swiss Superluminova, it should hold the charge longer than this. So something's not quite right there. I'm getting the light back on, and I'll be back with the review. So that is really, in terms of functionality, the only issue I have with this watch. It's a nice looking watch. I like the look of it, and again, it shouldn't be a showstopper for everyone. I haven't sized this, but just putting it on my wrist just to give you an idea from different angles. I do like the blue on there. It really draws me, actually. So it's definitely the fumé effect. It's not as strong as a sunburst, but it's certainly got a little bit of understated elegance to it. So it's a nice watch, definitely, and especially when you look at the mix between polished and brushed. Certainly like the watch. I like the fact that they've also not done a cookie cutter watch. No Rolex homage for their first watch, so that's pretty decent too. But the lume does nag me a little bit. especially when I look at the second issue. This is not a budget watch. If it was at the budget end for what it's offering, then fair enough, they cut some corners. But just to give you an idea, this watch retails at $499. I don't know if they're going to offer it on sale at some point, but this is the retail price. We're not in pre-orders. And the other two colors are $40 cheaper. They're, I think, $459. So for a $500 watch, I would expect decent lume on the indices if it has lume. I wouldn't have minded if it was like a polished indices and kind of stainless steel look to them, or silver colored indices and no lume at all, or just a dot of lume. But definitely the lume on here is I just hate to say it because I really like these guys and they've given me this watch now for the review, but I always have to be honest, it's a pretty bad lume there. But again, I guess I'm repeating myself a little bit, apologize, but it's not a dive watch and you can still tell the time with the lume on the hands. So I think that's reasonable. I'm sure if they say C3 Swiss Superluminova, they're referring to the hands. I do have to question what we have on the indices. So getting back to the price point, it's in the range of an NH35A, but it's definitely at the high end of the range. And that, let me just paint a few pictures just to give you an idea. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a custom bracelet that costs them to do their run. It's their first runs. They're probably not getting a good deal, smaller quantity. Definitely a custom case. Even little things like putting a mix of polished and brushed sounds simple, and somebody sits there with a machine buffing it. But all these cost extra. The amount of time each person has to put in to get that exactly right. Not sure what that is, but everything costs extra when it's custom. So they've definitely come up with a custom case and bracelet. At least the end links on the bracelet. I assume the rest is less custom. But $500 price point. Let's do some comps. So if I'm comparing apples to apples, retail to retail, the cheapest one I can think of that's an NH35 that has sapphire glass and solid link bracelet with screwed pins would be the Phoibos Wavemaster. The official retail on that's $300. You can always get them from Phoibos for $220 and elsewhere for less than that. So let's just say it's roughly half the cost of this one. So that's comparing apples to apples. And then I'm going to do a bit of an unfair comparison. But before I go there, I mean, it's certainly still in the ballpark. It's just high end. I've seen some NH35s. In fact, I've offered some for sale. NH35s that have things like meteorite dial or titanium cases and solid link titanium bracelets and other features that are unusual, and those are somewhat more expensive. So it's in the ballpark. It's just at the high end, as I'm saying. But just to get back to the lume, if I'm having a lume issue like this is priced kind of at the entry level for Swiss movement watches. So I could get a retail Steinhardt or something probably in this price range. And I certainly can get, if I'm looking for pre-orders and I'm cleverly shopping around, like right now there's a pre-order on Kickstarter that went open today, started their campaign, and that was a $305 watch with a Swiss automatic movement, a Solita SW240 with a date and a day complication as well. An extra $40, I think it was in pounds, so it's roughly $50-$60 for the bracelet, which was a solid link bracelet. So getting a comparable, I'm just roughly doing this, about $350 or so as a comparable. Now that's not completely a fair comparison. It's pre-order pricing versus retail. This may have been on pre-order and might have been somewhat cheaper, or maybe they just went straight to retail. But pre-order is always drastically reduced pricing because you're having to pay months in advance, and basically you're funding the production of the watch for the creator. There's a risk they might not create it. So there's a number of factors in there that in return you get a lower price. So this is not a pre-order, it's retail. So the better comparison might have been the Phoibos, but again, that's very aggressively priced. That's absolutely the cheapest combination for that I've seen that's decent. So most of the watches you're going to get like $350 or so, maybe let's call it $400 with the bracelet. So it's not hugely overpriced, but I do think it's on the high end. And my one point that I did have was the lume. I guess it's a sticking point for me because I have to weigh up, would I buy this watch? And I like the look of it. If I really love the look of it, I would buy this watch. If I like the look of it and it's just one of many in my collection, I think that lume might bug me for the price. If it was a little bit cheaper, maybe not. But I definitely really digging this case. I can't get enough of the case here. But you know, as the wearer of the watch, probably no one else is going to notice. But that would bug me. You know, a lume that just fades right away just doesn't feel good to me. So I do feel bad saying that, but I'm very candid in my reviews. If you have any questions, do let me know, and I will be happy to try and address them if I can. Really, also the other side of the coin is, if that's all I could find with the watch, there's no functional issues, the crown action was really smooth, it's a very solidly built watch with a little bit of heft to it, which means it's going to be a robust watch probably. And everything is very nicely done. I had absolutely no other functional issues with this watch, so it is a nice watch. And if lume's not a big thing for you, just ignore my comments here and just go for it, because I do like the look of the watch and I think this is going to make a number of people quite happy. So that's it pretty much, and again, put any questions that you have in comments and I'll try and address them. Thanks a lot. Take care.